What you are listening to now is the IU Report with Grant Shouse, a weekly feature on the Central Indiana Sports Report. Not only do we have the IU Report every week, we preview every football and men's basketball game. We also have a lot of women's basketball coverage with Michelle Garman, and we react to every game as well. A couple hours after the game, you can expect our reaction from Grant, and usually Mike Hutzel, and sometimes some other guests.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengels.
Welcome, Hoosier fans, to the IU Report with Grant Shouse, coming off a Week 1 win over Old Dominion. We talked right after the game, Grant. If you have not listened to that, go listen to the recap of the game with Mike Hutzel.
Very raw reactions.
Very raw reaction. That was what I was going to say. You had a very raw reaction with a few days of reflection. How do you feel?
Well, I've been able to watch the game since then, and I'm going to basically tell you what Signetti said in his press conference, his weekly press conference on Monday, is that they dominated the game. They dominated the game, but it was not reflected on the scoreboard, and it was very similar to the opener against Florida International last year. Indiana actually dropped from 20th to 23rd in this week's AP poll, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I think just due to the fact that I kind of want them to fly under the radar. That was my big thing last year. Is after about 3 weeks, I was like, this team should be ranked, but they weren't ranked until they were about 6-0, till they beat Northwestern and became bowl eligible. I was good with them flying under the radar for a long time, and I'm good with that this year. And I think they need to. You know, it's.
It used to be the polls mattered, Grant.
They really don't.
But you can earn your own way, and now it's a little different. Back when Purdue 5 or 6 years would be in the top 25 on a yearly basis, it mattered,
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to really matter very much anymore. I'd be happy to watch the Hoosiers just fly right around 20 until they. But if you beat Illinois, it doesn't matter. They're moving up if they beat Illinois.
Absolutely.
So.
And there's still a lot of ball to be played. You have 120 minutes of football until we even start thinking about Illinois. And
I don't know about that.
Indiana
fans can start thinking about Illinois now because Old Dominion was the toughest test between the season beginning and Illinois.
They were a really good Group of 5 team. And we said it on there the other night, is that I wouldn't be shocked if they're not at the top of their conference by the end of the year. And there's a lot of work to be done. Indiana controlled the time of possession. 41. I mean, they had the ball for 41 minutes.
Yeah, my analysis the other day was I think they won 85% of all plays, and I think that's an important stat.
Absolutely. And the thing is what really stood out to me was when I read the stat that their offense forced 15 missed tackles on Saturday. It was more than in any game last year. And they went to the playoffs. I mean, and they dominated a lot of those games. And they played better in those games last year than they did on Saturday. And, again, they dominated the game, really. Old Dominion, if you really think about it, had one offensive play.
Yeah.
They had one offensive, I guess
until
two.
Late in the fourth quarter.
Right. But they had one offensive play that I think got everyone bent out of shape. I really don't think it was them getting stopped on the goal line twice that really has everyone bent out of shape. It was the fact on the first play of the game when they ran a 75-yard touchdown.
I think it was the compound of the two. People were frustrated. They allowed that, and then you get down the goal line. Now you're really frustrated, and it was still obvious that IU was going to be the better team in that game, even down 7-0 and having just been stopped at the 1.
Well, even with some of these stats compared to last year, I want to read them to you here. I got them pulled up. First downs on Saturday, and these are stats compared to the opener last year against Florida International, just to be clear. On Saturday in 2025, Indiana had 30 first downs against Old Dominion. Against Florida International, they had 23 first downs. Against Old Dominion, they had 309 yards rushing. Against Florida International, only 234 yards rushing. Total yards of offense against Old Dominion, 502 yards of total offense. Against Florida International, 414 total yards of offense. In 2025 against Old Dominion, they had 89 offensive plays compared to Florida International, where they only had 65 offensive plays. One of the only edges that the Florida International game had is that Indiana averaged about 6.5 yards a offensive play per offensive play, and the other day against Old Dominion they averaged about 5.5. So about a yard less than what they were averaging per play in the opener last year. Attendance-wise, they had 3,000 more fans in the stands. And we talked about them leaving at halftime, which is bull crap. That's bull crap, and it'll get fixed. And actually, the quarterback play actually was a little better from Fernando Mendoza compared to Curtis Rourke in the opener. Mendoza threw for 18 of 31 passing, 193 yards. Still did not throw a touchdown. His longest pass went for 46 yards, and he was only sacked one time, and it was like a half of a sack. Like it wasn't really a sack. Curtis Rourke last year in the opener against Florida International threw 15 for 24 through the air for 180 yards, one touchdown. His longest pass went for 30 yards, and he was sacked twice compared to Mendoza, who was sacked once. Indiana this year against Old Dominion in the opener had the ball for 41 minutes and 28 seconds, where in 2024 against Florida International they had the ball for 32 minutes and 40 seconds. So actually Indiana dominated the game more on Saturday than they did against Florida International in the first game last year. But it's just because of a couple bad plays on offense, two missed assignments on defense, and a missed field goal and one dropped pass, where this is all looked really different. And that's unfortunate that is what the tests were going through. And I've had a chance. I watched the game twice. I've watched it twice. I watched breakdowns of it. I've looked at statistics. I've compared them.
Of course you have.
Yeah, and isn't that our job?
That's right.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do? So,
well, I mean, not just that, but the reason I wanted you to be my IU guy is because I'm looking for someone passionate. And if you're not a guy who's digging in, you're not the right guy. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are passionate.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, a few years ago, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have cared. But Saturday was really important to me. You know, I mean, you're a diehard fan. You've been waiting on this for over 200 days since the Notre Dame game last year. You've been ready to go. And honestly, I had a gut feeling going in that it may not be as good in the first game as we think. And I jokingly say before every game they're going to get beat. That's just what I do. When I was a kid and my dad was coaching basketball, I used to go around saying, it doesn't matter, we're going to lose tonight, when I knew we were going to win. So I've taken that approach here, and I'm not real worried about it. Now, if they have a vanilla showing and don't look as great, maybe about the same on Saturday against Kennesaw State, I think that'll raise some concerns a little bit, but a win is a win. You're never going to complain after a win, right? Wins are hard to come by. So it's important. It's just the fact that they didn't really play at the standard they'd wanted to play, but they still dominated the game. And the eye test was just the fact that they had a few bad things happen in, a certain amount of time. Like, did you watch the game?
Of course. You
watched the game. I mean, I'm sorry, you could not have drawn up a worse start to the game for any team, not just Indiana, but any team. That was a bad start. Giving up the long touchdown, getting stopped on the goal line. But really when the tide changed was the punt return for a touchdown. When Jonathan Brady, actually on that punt return for a touchdown, was running down the field, I saw it today, at 20 miles an hour. He was moving at 20 miles an hour. Doesn't sound like a lot, but a human running 20 miles an hour, that's unbelievable. So there are a lot of positives to take out of it, but a lot of growing. And that was by far the toughest non-conference team they're going to play in the first 3 weeks.
Of course, Grant, as I mentioned, you and Mike Hutzel recapped the game afterwards, reacted, and were a little bit emotional. And later this week, we will talk about the Kennesaw State game. whatever there is to talk about. But for now, I want to talk about some bigger picture things, and we've now seen every Big Ten team play at least once. So looking back on the schedule, anything change in your mind about it? And I'll tell you what mine is. To me, it looks like Michigan State and UCLA are even easier wins than we thought coming into the season.
Yeah, and I wasn't surprised by that. Michigan State beat Western Illinois 23-6, and Utah blew the drawers off of UCLA. UCLA is just not a good coach football team. And we saw that last year when Indiana went out there to the Rose Bowl and beat them on the road. It's a tough place to coach football because it's not a football school. They've had great players come out of that UCLA program, but
they had great teams in the past.
Yeah, and you do feel good about that stretch, but the stretch before it with Illinois, Iowa, and Penn State, it doesn't get any tougher than that. And you just got to keep going. But it's 1 week at a time, 60 seconds of play, whatever they say, fast, physical, relentless. Every play's got a life and a history of its own. So Kurt Cignetti knows that more than I do.
It was a really nice weekend for the Big Ten, I thought, in particular with Ohio State and Michigan. I'm sorry, not Michigan. I did pick Michigan to win the Big Ten, but I think after a week that was a really bad pick. I meant Penn State, and there are a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. It's not going to be an easy road, but if you don't take too much of a negative view from Saturday, and you shouldn't, there's no reason this team can't win between 8 and 10 games.
No, there's not any reason they shouldn't, and it's just a fact of that they just got to be more consistent. You got to be more consistent in the way they're going to play. Saturday is going to be a big test, and I promise you right now that coaching staff is nailing into them that they got to be better going into this week. And they gotta pass the eye test when you come off the field.
You got to start better.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that there's a saying that you can't win the game in the first quarter. You can certainly lose the game in the first quarter.
Yeah, if you're playing Ohio State and you give up a 78-yard touchdown run on the first play from scrimmage, that could be the end of you. So
yeah. And so good thing you do that against ODU instead of OSU. You know what I mean?
And Coach Cignetti is such a good coach that I'm sure that's the other thing is we talk about the goal line offense. They weren't great play calls. They weren't well executed. But if you have a bad coaching staff, like when the Colts do that this year, I'm going to assume that that's who they are.
Right.
But when IU does it with Coach Cignetti, and it's hard to imagine a coach won me over so much in 1 year, but he did. Mm-hmm. And there's no doubt he's going to get these things corrected.
Yeah.
No one else is going to have two 70-yard runs on those kinds of things wouldn't be that big of those fixable things wouldn't be that big of a concern to me.
And it was just literally one guy not doing his job for that to happen. And he may have, that first play, he may have broken it for a first down on the first play. But if the one guy did his job halfway correctly, they wouldn't have gotten up 7-0. I'm almost confident they wouldn't have gone down and scored.
I'm almost certain that the coaching staff saw something. They just saw something. They were like, hey, look.
And again,
watch what this guy does every time. Watch what he does. Watch what he does. Watch this alley open. And
there's no question.
And they saw it, and that's okay.
And I'm telling you, they've been working on that every single day since about the 4th of July. I'm telling you, they've been doing that every single day since fall camp started.
And they executed it perfectly twice. Mm-hmm. So, again, no concern if I'm an IU fan.
And I'm telling you, I think this also still looks a lot different if he didn't score the garbage time touchdown and made it 27-14. We're looking at this as it's 27-7, which is what I really thought it was going to be. When I left with 5 minutes to go in the game, I'm like, they're not going to score again. But then I got to the car, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And now you start to look at that different because they gave up a garbage time touchdown.
I wonder if you know anybody who predicted that IU would win by 13, but it would seem like a much bigger margin, because that's exactly what I said.
My thing is that, and I've heard other people say this, and I've said it before too, is that after a game like that, the old coach Tom Allen would have been in there crowd surfing in the locker room. We would be hoisting him up. The fight song would be going. Would be fired up. It'd be LEO this, LEO that. And we have a coach that, because they didn't play to their standard, still had over 500 yards of total offense, dominated the game, and comes in the press conference after the game pissed. So I'm glad that that's the standard that we're at with Indiana football.
Since we are where we are with the IU schedule, and really the football talk's going to ramp up in a couple of weeks, let's look more at the Big Ten as a whole, because that's going to be so important. By the way, Northwestern, oh, man, that is bad. Maryland we can play them. They were pretty impressive. That might be an interesting game now.
I haven't gotten to see them quite yet play.
Neither did I, but to beat Florida Atlantic 39-7, not a great program, but on the level of Old Dominion.
Yeah, I was there at Purdue 3 years ago now when they played Florida Atlantic, and Florida Atlantic about won. And I was up there rooting for Florida Atlantic.
You know they recruit Florida athletes, so you know they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and you're right. They are very comparable to Old Dominion. And actually, the game that Purdue played against Florida Atlantic that I went to a few years ago was a good game. It was a close game in the fourth quarter, and it was just about a couple ticks worse of a performance from Purdue than what Indiana had. And that's not a knock on Purdue. That's just how the game, I remember it going. And, when you play a good G5 team like that, like when Purdue played FAU or Indiana plays Old Dominion, that's just what happens. But this Kennesaw State team, and I know we'll talk about in our preview, they beat Liberty last year, and Liberty was undefeated. And it was Kennesaw State's first year in the league in Conference USA. So you can't take them lightly. You cannot take them lightly again. It's another test.
Indiana State you can definitely take lightly. They're the only ones on the schedule you're probably going to want to take lightly.
You can take lightly, but you can't tell your guys that.
No, that's right. But they could play their worst.
We can say that.
They could play their worst and win that game
by
40 points.
Exactly. And that was the thing when Indiana and Tom Allen played them. Those Indiana teams were awful. And we're still winning by 40 when they played Indiana State. Yeah, it's a different level of football.
Well, it's not just that. That level of football is really good, but Indiana State's not even good for that level.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I mean, if they were playing North Dakota State, I'd be a little concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So that level of football produces some good football. Don't get me wrong. But speaking of which, the other one that impressed me, and most people are going to say, it was just a FCS team. But Oregon beating Montana State 59-7. People, Montana State is really good.
Mm-hmm. I thought that would be more of a respectable game.
Yeah, me too.
And Oregon blew the drawers off of them. I mean, so that's impressive. Oregon's good. Yeah, Oregon is really good.
I think we could look back at the end of the year, and those are the two national champions. That's possible.
In FCS and FBS?
That's right.
Possible, yeah. Never know.
Interesting. And also, Winkers had 50 yards against Oklahoma. He had 50 yards in the second quarter and finished with 50 because they got behind. So, not as good as when he played Wisconsin a couple of years ago, but still, nice performance.
Who do they play next?
They play Morehead State this Saturday on his way to his 1,500-yard season. Grant, I'm sure all the IU fans are so interested in hearing about Illinois State football. Thank you so much for your time. I just love bragging about my nephew. Appreciate it, and we will talk really soon about the Hoosiers and the Owls.
I like that name.
Is it the Owls?
It is.
All right. Man, I nailed that.
I know.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks again to Grant for joining me and talking some IU sports. And thank you for listening. Do us a huge favor and share this podcast with an IU fan in your life and help spread the word that the Central Indiana Sports Report is here talking about Central Indiana sports every single day. Thanks again. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.